So Collingwood, you go down there, left arm, fast, medium, into the second straight away.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, I had about 4 years at Collingwood, and again, it was probably when my knees were really starting to play up even more so. But I had about 4 years there. I won the second bowling average one year. Mm-hmm. I played a handful of games in the firsts, and I can remember I played my first game at the Junction Oval.
Okay.
And Nigel Murch was captain coach of St Kilda at that time, and I've started off in a blaze of glory, and I think that after my first spell I've got 3 for 10, so I'm thinking, how good's this?
Yeah.
If I could keep it going, that'd be great. Well, unfortunately I didn't keep it up, and I finished up playing a few, as I said, the 3 or 4 seasons down there, and then eventually came back to Preston. But whilst I was there, I actually got into the state squad, I think more from a net bowling perspective. A guy that he played for Australia, Graham Yallop, his wife worked for me in a job that I did out in Camberwell, and we became quite friendly, and he came down a couple of times to watch at Collingwood, and he said, look, you know, we'll get you in the state squad, which is what I did. So I practiced at the MCG.
Wow. That would have been one hell of an experience.
It was an experience, because I can remember one night of practice there, which was the old Southern Stand, and the young guy who actually unfortunately passed away was Paul Melville.
Yes, from Richmond. Yeah.
From Richmond, and he's clipped me off his toes or something into the first level at the Southern Stand. The worst part about it is I had to go and get the ball myself. So again, was an experience, and I thinking, I watched it one night there, and they brought out this trailer load of bats out for all these guys, and I'm thinking, shit, I might be able to crack one of these.
Yeah.
No such luck.
Right.
No such luck.
Okay.
But no, so I spent the 4 years there, and then I came back to Preston.
What did you learn most with those 4 years?
I've always had a bit of a tendency when I was bowling, I'd drop it down the leg side a bit too often. And that was certainly one of the things that was worked on there. Some of the people you play against or you practice against, another guy that played there, Billy Picken, who was a very handy player. And I can remember Bill playing in the grand final against Richmond at the Albert Ground. And Bill had a heap of boils and that on his leg. And I can remember him facing John Lahane, and Lahane hit him on the thighs a number of times, and Bill did not flinch. Just an incredible guy. But again, Bill would take you for training in Collingwood sometimes, and it was a typical Bill Picken. The eyes would bulge out of his head, the froth would be coming out of his mouth, and he'd be really riding everyone on the training track. So, but he was a great guy, and he's another one of these people that you experience life with, but you don't catch up to until maybe later on.
Yeah. Just, it might help some of the current players. Why were you forcing it down leg side? Was it a technique issue?
I think
concentration?
It was probably a technique issue, and I think, you know, it's probably something that maybe coaches could have picked up on. I would probably drag my arm across my body a bit too much, trying to get some swing, and so that would have been I think the main reason I was pushing it down the leg side.
Yep.
That's how I see it. I'm sure it would have been better if a coach had picked up on it and maybe straightened me up a little bit.
Yep. You came back to Preston, and your knees were pretty well shot. You mentioned. So you struggled that year when you came back?
I struggled that year, and we actually played a semi-final against Baldwin, I think it was, out here.
In the twos?
In the seconds, and Mick Ryan was captain, and I think I bowled about 21 or 22 overs on the trot. And the next day my knees were 3 times their normal size with the fluid and that, and if we had to play in the grand final, we got beaten in that one, and if we had played in the grand final, I probably would have struggled to have been available.
Okay. Mm. Yeah.
So yeah, it was a bit of an issue.
Did you finish up having surgery or anything on it, or just?
I ended up having. I had a full reconstruction.
Oh, okay.
done.
Yeah. Okay.
And ultimately, I've now had two knee replacements.
Oh wow. So.
And I have to say that knee replacements are the best thing that I've ever had done.
Right. Okay.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
So I remember reading a couple of 18 months ago, Dave Norris was having a knee replacement.
Yes.
I think he was a bit concerned. Mm-hmm. And I shot him. I did send him an email and just said, "Hey, go for it, mate. Just have the confidence, and it'll be good."
Fantastic. So that was the end of your playing career with cricket down here at Preston. Did you ever play cricket again?
No.
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 Okay. So, but you became a fantastic lawn bowler. And have had quite an illustrious career over about 40 years playing. How did bowls find you?
What ended up happening is I had 1 year off after I finished playing here. Mm-hmm. And still being single in those days, I used to enjoy a beer. Mm-hmm. Probably still do. But there was a guy I got involved with the Preston Thirds Football Club as team manager, and there was a guy there whose son played. So Jim Skeen was the guy, and he was involved at Reservoir Bowling Club, so he said, "Why don't you come down and have a game?" So I did, and that was the start of it. So I spent 5 or 6 years at Reservoir, and then I was married in 1987.
Right.
And moved to the other side of town, so I went to Doncaster Bowls Club, where I was lucky enough to play in a premiership side over there after a couple of years, and then I eventually went to Box Hill, had 2 years there, and then finished up at Mitcham, where I currently am. So
you bowl right hand?
I bowl right hand.
How did that come about? Because
throwing is pretty much the only thing I do with my left arm, and bowling.
Oh, right. Okay.
Overarm bowling.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
But sometimes when they say, "I'll change your hand on the bowl screen," I can go.
Okay. Pretty handy.
So that works out all right.
Yeah, pretty handy.
Yeah. So I've been at Mitcham now for over 20 years, and I've spent time on committee. I've been part of the selection process. Was treasurer for a number of years. So now I still, typically for me, spend a bit of time around the bar.
Right. Okay.
So no, it's good.
Excellent. Your professional career, you were in finance as a young bloke.
Pretty much spent most of my working life in finance.
Okay.
Banks, building societies. I finished up with the ANZ, and I was working in an area called margin lending. Mm-hmm. And I used to look after the finance side there. I was lucky enough, I developed a collection program for them at one stage, and was able to implement that. And what ended up happening then was that there was a change of management which resulted in the department being moved to Sydney. Mm-hmm. And so the jobs in Melbourne for a number of people became redundant. Mm-hmm. And so I spent the last couple of weeks of my working life in Sydney training someone to take over my job.
Yeah.
So that was an experience. But it was, look, the bank was good to me, and I can't complain. They looked after us pretty well.
So you retired at that point?
No, I ended up, I had about, I think this all happened in September, so I had a few months off, and I ended up doing a total sea change and drove a bus for a special needs school.
Oh, right. Yeah.
For about 3 years.
That would have been rewarding?
It was rewarding because what you're doing, you're picking up kids with autism, and taking them to school in the morning and then taking them back home at night.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was rewarding, apart from the shoes that you copped in the back of the head sometimes when you're driving. But
That was all part of the fun.
That was part of it. And in addition to the driving, I did a bit of admin work at the school for a while, and eventually the school decided that they were going to outsource the buses. And so that was the end of pretty much my working life, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So what have you been doing in retirement?
I picked up the golf clubs, and I enjoy having a hit of golf.
Yeah, what are you playing off?
No, I don't have a handicap.
Okay, yeah.
I've never joined a club. We have a particular lifestyle package out the Ringwood area, and I can play golf at Ringwood or Dorset golf course as many times as I want for about $63 a fortnight.
Right, okay.
So I play that. I still play my bowls, probably not as well as what I used to, but I still enjoy it. So I'm still playing Division 1, can't complain.
Wow, it's a pretty fair effort. How old are you?
I'm coming up I'll be 72 this year.
Yeah, gee, that's a fair effort, still playing Division 1.
Yeah, so I'm pretty happy about that.
Yeah, yeah. And tell us about your family.
I married Monica in 1987, and we were lucky enough to have a great son in Chris, who was born when my wife was almost 40. And Chris is now 30? Yep. And he's married to Chelsea, and they live in Bendigo.
Right.
So they're both school teachers up there. He plays his footy, and he, up until a couple of years or last year, he was still playing cricket. He spent time in England a couple of years ago, and he actually played a couple of games for the Australia House cricket team.
Right.
And one of the teams that they played against was the Windsor House staff. So that's Windsor Castle staff and he was lucky enough to make 150 not out.
Fair effort.
Which was a pretty fair effort. So he's certainly surpassed me as a batsman. He's been a very, very good contributor in the cricket world in that regard.
Is he a big bloke like you?
Sorry?
Is he a big bloke like you?
He's 6'10".
Wow, bigger.
So he's not a midget, and he bowls offies.
Oh wow.
He started bowling a bit of pace, but then he decided that the offies were a little bit easier for him.
Yeah.
But it was interesting, following up from that game at Windsor Castle, a couple of weeks later, we happened to be in London and caught up with he and Chelsea there, and they played a game against the Barbados Cultural Society, which happened to have a couple of Zimbabwe test players in it, plus a number of West Indian county players. And it was a great game. It was one day, they played 20-20, I think, and Chris got a couple of wickets, made a few runs, and then at the end of the day, they presented medallions to all the players, and the medallions were presented by Gary Sobers and Joel Garner.
Right.
Which was such a fantastic experience. It actually gave a bit of a laugh on the day because Joel was looking up to Chris when he placed the medallion around his neck. So we had a bit of a laugh about that. But I think Chris sent me an email, a text message later on, and he was showing me we had to leave. He stayed on, the players had a meal, and at this little ground in England, 5,000 people turned up to watch a game.
Gee whiz.
There was all these West Indians out on the ground, dancing away, just having an absolute ball at the end of the day. So what an experience for him. What
an experience.
Yeah.
And you're in good health, Gary?
Sorry?
You're in good health?
I've been very fortunate health-wise.
Yeah.
I had a small episode last year with pneumonia, but other than that, no, been great.
Fantastic.
Very, very lucky health-wise. We do a fair bit of walking, we do a bit of sightseeing when we can get out and do it. But no, we've been both very fortunate.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, that's quite a story you sort of told us. Just to wrap up, Gary certainly was one of the most talented players I've ever seen down here. Beautiful action, quick. Probably never reached his full potential here, but None of us did, probably. But it's been fantastic catching up with you, Gary. All the best, and we look forward to seeing you at some of the 1860 functions.
Fantastic, Lee. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Good on you, mate.
Good.
Thank you. Is there anything else you want to cover?
If I could say, I'd probably just follow on from what you've just mentioned, probably not reaching the full potential. There were a couple of issues that would have had us a hand in that, which would have been my commitment, which was probably not as good as what it should have been. Plus, I think the injuries, a couple of injuries that maybe people didn't realise the severity of them.
Yes.
But other than that, look, I've enjoyed myself at Preston, made some great friendships. Unfortunately, we don't catch up as often as we would like to, but with the 1860 club, well, hey, maybe we can really get together and enjoy it.
Fantastic, mate.
Good on you again.
Good on you,
Thanks,
mate.
Lee.
Thank you.
Right.